You're listening to Stealing from Wizards, Volume 4, Arson, by R.A. Consul. Chapter 29, Solstice.
An injured dragon is a desperate dragon. Hurt and hunger will make it unpredictable. But if you can ease its pain and nurse it to health, you will have earned its trust. I am the Marquis de Miquelon, and I demand he be submitted to interrogation by me and my carabine.
The man standing at the heavy iron door of the orphanage looked the part of Acadian nobility. He wore a purple military-style uniform jacket, so laden with embellishments and medals that it would tear itself apart under the weight if not for the enchantments. He was flanked by a quartet of grim-looking wizards carrying staves meant for calling down destruction on their enemies. He was being refused entry by Talon Dubois, who was unimpressed by the threats and titles being thrown about.
Of course, Your Grace. I'll note your request and add it to the pile. We have our best people sorting out the priority of such claims, so you should hear back early in the new year. That boy is a threat to the entire Confederation, and I demand he be turned over to me immediately.
The Marquis was unused to being refused and was starting to fume.
That boy is currently chopping carrots to serve to refugees, countered Dubois. We have no reason to believe he's a threat to anyone. He teleported an entire school, snarled the Marquis.
Did he? Dubois said, as if the idea were a surprise to him. He pulled out a notebook and started writing.
I just want to make sure I understand this correctly. You are accusing a teenage boy of moving an entire school, several young dragons, and a lindworm hundreds of miles. Is that correct? Of course, said the Marquis. Everyone knows what they saw? My investigations thus far would disagree. Most people seem quite perplexed.
Dubois continued to write even as he raised an accusing eye to the Marquis.
You seem very confident, though. Do you have access to special information? Your father was a close acquaintance with Claudius Roche, was he not?
The two men locked eyes. Dubois was threatening a lengthy and embarrassing investigation into the Marquis and his family in a polite and professional tone. The nobleman huffed and stormed off.
Happy Yule, Your Grace,
said Dubois to the departing Marquis and his entourage. Courreau saw the exchange from the orphanage kitchen window, where he was, as Dubois had said, chopping carrots. Reaching an understanding with lindworms had felt like a victory, but it did not rehouse the people who had fled Bytown. Those with nowhere else to be, strays and wizards alike, stayed camped outside the orphanage. They were homeless, scared, and increasingly hungry. And it was Yule. The orphanage opened its larder, and every kid there old enough to hold a potato peeler set to work cooking for the crowds outside. The orphans knew the kitchen best and how to follow directions from Miss Bridget. They cooked continuously, delivering hot food to the refugees. When the orphanage supplies ran low, the Avalon teachers who had stuck around started taking up collections. Every wizard in the Three Kingdoms had gone through Avalon, and few could refuse their old instructors. Sacks of rice and cans of beans, chocolate bars and tea bags, anything people had salvaged in their flight from the dragons was gathered together so no one there would go hungry. At least not that day. Not on Solstice. The cooking provided a refuge for Courreau. The Marquis was not the only person who wanted to speak with him. They had questions he did not wish to answer, accusations he did not wish to face. He was someone to blame for ruined houses and lost property, someone small, weak, and easy to punish, unlike the dragons. Basic decency kept some away, those who could respect that he was busy doing good work to help hungry people. The young lindworm in his company dissuaded others. She was beautiful and curious, but only a fool would upset something with that many teeth and a mother who could flatten a city. Sir Talon Dubois also did a fine job interfering, partly out of genuine compassion for Kuro, and partly because he liked to make nobility squirm. Azalea and Belladonna were old tenants of the orphanage, and they took up their posts in the kitchen as well. They took turns grating cheese and chasing away the excessively brash or inquisitive. Marie and the other knights distributed food to the people outside, while Evelyn shamed any noble who had the means to help for doing any less. With Azalea right beside him in the kitchen, Kuro felt he should talk to her, or let her talk to him at least. He had no idea what to say, but he imagined she might like a chance to keep yelling at him for running off to his near-certain death. But there was no privacy, no time to take a break while hungry people remained. Instead, he found himself standing next to her in the kitchen, quietly slicing vegetables shoulder to shoulder. Without meaning to, he matched her rhythm, his hands slowing to slice in time with hers, their breaths falling into sync. It was, in its own way, a replacement for the dance they'd failed to have at Samhain. They shared few words not related to celery slicing, but they shared in each other's company, and for the moment that was enough. They also exchanged an unspoken agreement not to be as painfully awkward to watch as their friends. Moira was having to navigate the unanticipated consequences of having kissed Charlie before she went off to battle dragons. The kiss might have been tradition for a knight going into danger, but the tradition wasn't clear on what she was supposed to do if she came back in one piece. It was obvious to everyone who could see them that they were hopelessly infatuated with each other. Even Kuro could see it. Moira blushed and sputtered every time Charlie spoke to her, and her eyes lingered whenever the gangly blonde skipped away to haul another bag of vegetables to the cooks. Charlie was no better. She grinned like a half-open zipper at the merest glimpse of Moira's auburn hair, and lost control of her extremities if they ever made eye contact. The depths of yearning they accumulated while pretending not to be interested in each other, from sense of duty to her queen on the part of Moira, and a fear of complicating her friendships with Marie and Arthur on the side of Charlie, had shattered. Their unrestrained affection poured forth at a rate neither could cope with, and in a place and time that forced everyone else around them to suffer for it. Arthur escaped to the kitchen. "Please let me peel some potatoes," he begged. "Only orphans allowed in here," said Kuro. "I'm adopted," replied Arthur. "Isn't that good enough to let me stay? I can't watch those two trying not to kiss each other any longer." Kuro showed mercy and found him a peeler, setting him up in a corner where he couldn't see outside. It was well dark by the time the cooks and servers sat down to eat. The refugees had been fed. The warped and twisted wreck of the high school was repaired and warmed enough for people to sleep inside as December snow started to fall. Orphans, teachers, students, knights, a hound, a dragon, and a queen sat together on mismatched chairs in the manor hall, eating an odd assortment of leftovers and calling it a Yule feast. Canned beets, slightly burnt garlic bread, and sliced lunch meat with applesauce somehow seemed like the most delicious meal any of them had eaten in months. Everyone was too tired to chatter. They just shared in quiet company and mutual exhaustion, listening to Solstice carols, which drifted faintly on the wind, echoing in from the refugees in the high school. That peace ended when a cry of a wounded animal joined the chorus of carolers. A male dragon lay outside the orphanage walls. It was small for an adult and badly injured from fighting. The smell of food had drawn him. He limped on a broken leg and dragged a torn wing as he struggled across the dark landscape.
"How much of what was in that book do you think is true?"
Charlie asked Kuro. "Did you read it already?" he replied.
"It was short, and I needed to do something to distract myself from worrying about you and Moira and Marie and everybody,"
Charlie said, scowling at Kuro for causing her anguish, then turned to her new girlfriend and said,
"Hey, can I borrow your armor for a minute? Does anyone have any gold on them? And do we have any of that lunch meat left?"
Then the assembly watched as a farm girl did what no adult wizard or knight would have dared. She approached the monster, placated its hunger and slaked its thirst, before soothing it to sleep with magic. Then She stitched its torn wing and splinted its leg, as if it were the most ordinary thing in the world. What happened to not feeding wild animals? Kuro asked when she returned.
I'm a professional,
said Charlie, chin raised with pride.
Hey, Mr. Hoganov, Mr. Sigurd, do you think you can help me make something this dragon would fit on so I can haul it back to my farm? It's not safe to leave it here.
When her father pulled up outside the orphanage in his rusting red pickup truck to take his daughter home, he found a huge enchanted trailer waiting for him to haul back across the continent with them. Rather than the reasonable reactions of terror or confusion, Jack Cook just went to work checking the stitches and ensuring the beast would be comfortable for the trip. Like father, like daughter. Kuro waved goodbye to Charlie as she and her dad drove off into the night with a sleeping dragon in tow. She was the first to leave, but not the last. Exhaustion was winning out. Arthur and his family said their goodnights and went to find a space in the school to sleep. The teachers did the same. Ms. Crawley held back long enough to speak to Kuro in relative private.
If I go to bed, will you still be here in the morning? She asked.
Yeah, said Kuro, both hoping and mostly believing it was true. She hugged him. Really hugged him. For long enough that he started to worry that she'd fallen asleep standing. Eventually, she released him and then held him out at arm's length, as if to get a good look at him.
I don't know that you should care about the opinion of a criminal teacher, but I'm really proud of you.
Another lingering form intercepted Kuro on his way to his old room at the orphanage.
I was going to ask the same thing, said Azalea.
They leaned against each other for support, forehead against forehead, buttressing each other against their impending collapse. See you in the morning? Asked Kuro, his fingers twining with hers.
See you in the morning, she confirmed, and peeled herself away from him as if he had a magnetic pull she could barely overcome.
He desperately wanted sleep, needed sleep. But he had a responsibility, and his new dragon did not yet understand what 2 a.m. meant to humans. He was woken by pathetic mewling at his bedside. She had shrunk down enough to fit into his room and figured out doorknobs. Barely conscious, Kuro scrounged enough stray ingredients to bake a mismatched batch of cookies in the manor kitchen. The moment they were cool enough to eat, 4 women arrived in the dining hall to join the dragon in their consumption. I was wondering when you were going to show up, Kuro said to the Norns, then offered them the cookies they'd obviously come for. He was interested in the slight differences between the women. Red went for the chocolate chip, Black for peanut butter, White refrained, and Sam devoured an oatmeal raisin cookie, which drew scorn from her brainmates. You've done remarkable things, said White with austere nobility.
The sort that become myths given time, said Black, adding gravitas. The kind nobody would fault you for being proud of, said Red, adding warmth.
Yeah, you did all right, kid, said Sam, shattering their carefully cultivated air of mystery. Kuro grinned and joined in the eating of his baking. How much did you actually know? More than we'll admit, said White.
Less than we'd like, confessed Red. You and the Lindworms were a bit of a blind spot, to be honest, said Black.
Sam got the faraway look she had when finding new places in her brain, and continued on from where Black had left off. When something happens once in a millennium, encounters something that's never happened before, it's hard to see much beyond our own fingers. Will I regret it if I ask why you're here now? Said Kuro around a mouthful of cookie. For thanks, said White, and a warning, said Black.
Thank you for finding Sam and her fox, and also seeing us safely off the island, said Red.
And be careful, said Sam with genuine concern. There are people who believe you can blink a building across a continent and know you have a dragon. They'll come for you, probably sooner than later. Not all can be frightened off by a loyal hound. Kuro shrugged and offered another cookie. Some things you don't need to be a Norn to see coming, he said. You have a plan? They asked. More or less. Thank you for listening to Stealing from Wizards. If you liked our show, please consider rating or reviewing on iTunes. If you want to support this podcast or just can't wait for the next chapter, the full book is available on Amazon, Kobo, and Indigo. Our theme music was written by Camille Saint-Saëns, transcribed by Franz Liszt, performed by Rebecca Verdun, and used with permission. This episode was produced by Jim Tigwell.